Phil, great to meet you. Where are you based? Where are you?
Yeah, good to meet you too. And I'm based in the UK, in the Devizes area, which is in Wiltshire, right on the Kennet and Avon Canal, and amongst all the Wiltshire hills. So it's a really nice place for getting out for some good walks in these lockdown times.
Yeah, so important. I was just to start off, I was looking at your Facebook page, and there up front is this wonderful photo of you in a one atmosphere suit.
Yeah,
brilliant. I mean, the first time I ever saw those on TV was with Sylvia Earle, which was a long time ago.
Yeah.
They've changed in design now by the looks of it. How did you get into one of those, and do you use them often?
Well, so the story behind how I got into one, because it's quite unusual to get access to one of those pieces of equipment, and more importantly, the training to use it. I started working as a diving safety officer for Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, or WUI as they're known. They're the institute on the east coast of North America that found the Titanic, found the Black Smokers. So they're one of the premium oceanographic institutes worldwide, and I started working for them as a trainer, teaching their dive team to use closed circuit rebreathers. They'd chosen a particular rebreather, bought it through the manufacturer, asked how do we get trained, and the manufacturer had sent me their test diver. I worked for the manufacturer at the time, and so I went over and did their course, and then as a process of doing their course, got to know the individuals, we liked each other, and they invited me back to be a dive team member on some of their projects. The first of which was the very famous Antikythera mechanism shipwreck in Greece. So after a couple of seasons as working as a commercial diver for them on the project, they actually asked me to be their diving safety officer. And that grew into being DSO, dive safety officer, and eventually DOM, dive operations manager, for a lot of their projects and a lot of other institutional projects. Now, from the Antikythera wreck, we had the sponsorship option to use an exosuit, which is the iteration of the one atmosphere suit that we have, free of charge. So the owner of the suit said, I believe in the project. I think the project has great merit. I have this suit. I have the full support package. So I'd be prepared to loan it to Woods Hole as and when they need for their projects. And this happens quite often with Woods Hole. They're associated with other projects. For example, when James Cameron went to the bottom of the deepest point in the ocean, the Mariana Trench, in his self-designed and self-built Deep Challenger submersible, Woods Hole were involved in that as well. So they tend to get involved, and they tend to get a lot of support from different institutions. So we got sent over to Woods Hole itself in the town of Woods Hole, which is to the south of Boston. And we did the full pilot training program. So rather than just a try dive, we were actually there for 9 days, doing the assembly, the system checks, the prep. All of us were trained to be topside operators and supervisors as well as divers on the suit. And we worked our way through a series of dives under the Woods Hole dock through their moon pool, which is not very deep, but with a one atmosphere suit, it doesn't matter, because the feel of diving it in 20 meters under the Woods Hole dock or diving it in 70 meters on the Antikythera shipwreck site is absolutely identical. You're at one atmosphere of pressure. You go down, you do your job, you come up, you get out, you have a sandwich, and then you supervise the next guy. No decompression, no cold, no water, no nothing. So I actually got certified as a exosuit ADS pilot, and got to log a significant number of hours on the unit during the training. And then we shipped it out to Greece, and were loaned a support vessel by the Greek Navy, big old post Second World War steamship called the Thetis, and we run the exosuit off the back of that. And the reason was on the Antikythera mechanism shipwreck, it's most famous for numerous bronze and marble sculptures that were recovered in 1901 by brass helmet divers, sponge divers. And one of those sculptures is a huge 2 meter tall statue of Hercules, and it's now in the foyer of the cafe at the National Museum of Archaeology in Athens, along with 3 huge marble horses. So the idea was that Hercules was stood in a chariot being pulled by the horses, all marble and wood, but one horse is missing. And when you look back through the records, large rocks the size of a small van were dumped because they were moved, believing other sculptures may be under them. And it's likely that one of these dumped rocks was actually the 4th horse. So we used bathymetry and side scan sonar technology from the company EdgeTech to find these anomalies on the seabed off the wreck site. And the plan was to proceed and use the exosuit to go and look at these lumps if they were too deep for our CCR team as part of the ongoing project. So sorry if that was quite a long answer, but that's how I got in an exosuit.
Absolutely fascinating. My goodness, what an adventure.
Very much. Yeah, very much.
So when you're actually using it, I mean, what kind of depths, what's the maximum depths you've been in it?
For myself, I've only been 20 meters in it. So basically, I did all my training at Woods Hole in 20 meters, and then we had problems deploying it in Greece because we were loaned. One of the most expensive parts of operating machinery like that at sea is the supporting vessel. Now, the ideal vessel to actually support the exosuit close to shore in deep water would be a DPV vessel, dynamically positioning vessel, with thrusters connected to satellites so it can hold position regardless of current and waves and winds, not anchored. And that would be the ultimate system to deploy the exosuit or ROV or even a bell-based diving team from, but they're very, very expensive. On that project, we had various vessels for the dive team, but for the big heavy-duty stuff, we were given a Greek Navy ship to support the project. 2 projects I've done over the last few years in Croatia, we were given Croatian Navy vessels. In 2017, a landing ship tank as our dive vessel. But these things are not very maneuverable. So the landing craft in Croatia, we put on a 3-point mooring. So we just moor it and leave it over the site as a working platform for the whole project, only moving it if bad weather came. Antikythera, the topography of the shoreline of the island of Antikythera is near vertical. So the wreck site is very close to shore, but in very deep water. So positioning a vessel has got huge risk if the storms come, which is why the Antikythera shipwreck is there in the first place. So we weren't really able to successfully deploy the exosuit onto the wreck itself because of the type of ship we were using. In our process of visiting Antikythera 9 times between 2012 and 2017, we didn't have the budget for a DSV or other such suitable vessel at that time. But the proviso for the team of pilots that were trained to continue to loan that particular exosuit via the medium of Woods Hole still exists. So fingers crossed we'll get back there or other projects with it and a suitable vessel to use it more aggressively in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It would be like a dream to get into one of those. I did some filming with one many years ago, and not me inside. I was filming it from the outside, and I thought, wow, how exciting is this? Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Your life now is closed circuit rebreathers. You teach courses. I basically started my kind of diving career, which has been 30 years now, started as a basic scuba instructor, taught scuba, funnily enough, on Swanage Pier, one of the very popular and iconic diving sites back in the day. And I was a PADI instructor, and I worked there for several years before the birth of technical diving. Kevin Gurr brought that into the UK from the US. And I started to use that for basically exploring shipwrecks beyond the air range in the 60, 70 metre plus range in the UK South Coast Channel. And we were out every other weekend finding new wrecks and identifying them using Trimix and technical nitrox and other of these processes. And then slowly I stopped teaching recreational and moved across to teach technical. I actually ended up working for Kevin Gurr at his company, Phoenix Diver Training.
That evolved into Phoenix Oceaneering, and through that, using rebreathers, we took part in 2 treasure recovery projects for the Fisher Corporation, the Atosha and Margarita wrecks in the Gulf of Mexico, and then a deeper wreck, the Pilar, off of the southern tip of the island of Guam in the Pacific. So we were using their US Navy Mark 15-5 rebreathers with civilian custom-made electronics packs, which were basically developed and invented by Kevin. And then from that, Kevin's first standalone rebreather, the Ouroboros, was built. The company evolved into VR Technologies, who made the first really sort of mass-produced successful Trimix open and closed circuit computer, the VR3. And I became the test diver, the principal trainer and instructor trainer for that company on the Ouroboros, and then subsequently the Sentinel, the next rebreather they made. So that was how I got into rebreather, so to speak. But the whole evolution up to about 5 years ago was teaching beginner, teaching instructors, teaching dive masters, teaching technical and cave, then rebreather. And then that led me into meeting the guys from WUI and other scientific institutions. So over the last 5 years, I've pretty much become commercial as a dive safety officer, dive operations manager and diver for scientific diving projects worldwide. So that's kind of how it all grew and came together, really.
So are you still running courses, or have you totally given that up now?
No, I run, I suppose, without it sounding terrible, I run what I want to run for the groups I want to run it through. So I do, on average, 1 or 2 months per year of cave training, mostly in the Lot Dordogne region of France, but also in other places around the world. I did some cave courses for Croatian students in Croatia in the mountains last year. And I run 1 month of advanced level mine diver instruction, which is very similar to cave, small differences, but very similar in Sweden per year. And I tend to run the higher level stuff. So I'll run full hypoxic trimix in cave or in mine. I'll run DPV, that's diver propulsion vehicle, slightly different to the previous DPV we talked about, in mine or in cave. I'll teach people to map mines and caves, so cartography courses. So the higher levels, specializing in mine and cave, because I enjoy it. And my origins as a diver came from being a dry caver, joining the British Cave Diving Group, CDG, and diving sumps in British caves. So it's the thing that drives me. My passion is exploring caves when I'm not working. So I still teach that for that reason.
Do you ever get anybody fail these courses?
So it's a very good question. And I say this to my students when we start an inquiry line: can you teach this? Yes. How long does it take? That depends. How much does it cost? That depends. Because what I started to do probably as much as 10 years back is, instead of advertising and saying to a student, you can do course A, it will run from Monday to Friday next week. What I say is, oh, well, basically a mentor program. What are you now? What do you want to achieve? I will book you 5 days, 9 days, 10 days of my time, and we will work on what you have, improve it, develop it, extend it. And the next logical step is that you would be working towards this qualification. We may or may not reach that required level of ability by the end of the 9 days, 5 days that you've booked with me. Either way, you'll improve as a diver. Rather than kind of dangling, come for 5 days, at the end you'll get this qualification. Say, well, no, come 5 days and get better. And at the end of that 5 days, it might be, well, I think with another 3 days of development, or 2 days, or 1 day, you may well work towards your next level. With some people, they come on a course and end up redoing the one before. And this is no fault of theirs, certainly no fault of the instructor that trained them previously. People get rusty. So it was more a personal mentoring training, like a fitness trainer, I guess, of like, well, where are you now? Where do you want to be? Let's have a look at what your capabilities are, and let's try and get you to where you want to be in an unknown time frame, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. So what are the inherent dangers then of using rebreathers, and particularly closed circuit rebreathers?
Well, we jump backwards a little bit just before I answer that. The inherent dangers of diving is you'll drown. Because, you know, with the exception of free diving, which is very limited and is not without its own individual set of risks, we're not meant to be underwater. So basically, whether we're on a single tank in 20 meters of water looking at fish in the tropics, or if we're on a rebreather with 5 bailout tanks at 100 meters looking at a wreck in Norway, the basic fact that we cannot live in the environment we've chosen to put ourselves in can never go away. No different to space. That environment is completely unsurvivable for us without the tools we take with us. Now, as to danger, whether you take a single tank diver in 10, 20 meters of water or a high level technical diver, you could argue which is more dangerous. If a single tank diver has a failure of their primary breathing system, which is effectively the first stage on that regulator that they own, they can't breathe anything. The octopus that people have because they're told to have an octopus, you can't breathe it if the first stage has failed. You can't breathe it if the cylinder is empty for some reason. You have now nothing to breathe. So you have to use your training and go to your buddy and give an appropriate signal and take a donated second stage to share gas and then ascend. But what if your buddy's not there? Because if you're looking at an audience of British or Northern European divers and say to them, honestly, have you ever misplaced your buddy? People are honest. I think just about everyone would say yes. And if that occurred, when you have a single breathable source, you now have no options. So a beginner technical diver is taught about redundancy. They're taught if you need it, you need 2, and the ability to switch from the broken one to the working one. Now you can now layer that up as high as you want to go. So is the diver on a closed circuit rebreather at 100 meters in a flooded mine at more risk than the single tank diver in 10 meters in the ocean? Well, maybe not, because as long as they have, over a series of dives, over a number of years, gradually progress their qualifications, their training and their equipment to effectively mitigate the risk that exists and have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, then they effectively become self-sufficient. They dive in a team so they're more than self-sufficient, and they actually effectively become safer. If a diver chooses to go beyond, if we call it the rules, recognized procedures, to take risks that sort of open up that further, and that may be an explorer who chooses to go further than normal to achieve something like finding a new cave, climbing a new mountain, etc., then maybe their risk level rises. But I suppose the way to put it is, thanks to the work of the legendary cave pioneer Sheikh Exley, looking at accident analysis and developing his book Blueprint for Survival, which in short is a book of 10 things that if you do those 10 things, like have redundant gas, have a backup light, always use a guideline, etc., you probably won't have an accident in a cave, even while cave diving. And then you look at the statistics and say, well, how many certified qualified cave divers who are current, i.e. they're actively cave diving, have accidents? Tiny, tiny numbers. How many very experienced open water scuba instructors who think, that's okay, I've got a torch, there's a line, I'll go and have a little look, have accidents? Loads. That's why Blueprint was developed. And now leading into your question, are rebreathers dangerous? I suppose it's like, are dogs dangerous? Inherently, no. You know, it's just mechanics. Modern rebreathers have levels of backup. They have redundancy. Your primary instrumentation telling you what you're breathing, should it fail, is backed up. There are means of proving whether it's telling the truth by doing certain skills that make it have a known quantity. And if the known quantity is matched by the displays, you know it's working, you know it's telling the truth. And what's evolved enormously over the last 15 years is the quality of product and the quality of training. So much like Sheikh's Blueprint evolved the quality of cave training, the last 10 years have hugely evolved the quality of rebreather training through the main agencies and the quality of rebreather manufacture, compliance with CE certification, and the statistics of properly qualified divers using proper equipment, not modified, the statistics are now good.
Perfect answer. Yeah, I've never gone into rebreathers at all, except for trying the odd one for reviews and things. And I have to say, you know, even the little tiny bit that I did, I enjoyed thoroughly. But I've never made that leap. Perhaps after this, I will. It sounds too exciting.
Yeah.
Tell me, is it the environment of the oceans, wrecks, caves that draws you in, or is it the technicality and the challenges of physically doing it?
Definitely the environment. You know, if I could find unexplored cave or an undived virgin wreck, last seen when it sunk in 10 meters of water in 30 degrees C in the tropics, I'd dive there. I don't by nature, I don't like bad visibility, cold water, or uncomfortable conditions. I find myself in them regularly because that's where you have to go to explore, to find an undived wreck, to find undived cave, to go to a new gallery in a mine that's not been seen since the mine closed. Tends to be deeper, requiring decompression, tends to be colder, tends to be, you know, sometimes poorer visibility. But yeah, it is, for me, certainly, and I believe for everyone it should be, it is about what you go there to see. You know, you don't dive as an exercise in technical skills. You dive to see a wreck, see marine life, see coral, see geology, you know, and therefore you just learn the right skill set and obtain the right amount of tools. And back to the previous question and your comment, a rebreather is a tool. You know, I don't dive rebreather because it's better than open circuit or I like it more. It's just most of the dives I find myself doing now, it's far more productive. And if used properly, actually, I believe safer because of the time it gives you in the event of a failure. So yeah, environment, absolutely. To that previous question, always about the environment.
Perfect. Yeah. Oh, that's great to hear. That's good. Have you got any projects lined up? Any things that you haven't done yet that you would like to do?
So projects lined up, yeah. Despite the current lockdown situation, we because it was institutional, we were able to continue one of our big projects last year, which is a type of work we now do, which is working for an American organization called the DPAA. That's the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. And what they do is they look for the remains of the 90,000+ American soldiers, sailors and airmen that basically were left behind after a war. And basically they try to recover them, send them home for the family to get closure, to get full burial, to get a full military ceremony, normally recognition at Arlington Military Cemetery. And we've been working for them through the university that I work for full time, which is basically Lund University Maritime Archaeological Department. So what we did in 2017, we went to a B-24 bomber. We excavated and surveyed the wreck, and we basically returned all things that we found that may have been possible material evidence or may have been possible osseous remains, bone remains, and we returned them via Germany through military flight to the DPAA's laboratories in Hawaii, where they were tested in every manner conceivable, including DNA. And we established that we had found Lieutenant Eugene Ford, the pilot of that B-24 Tulsa American, and he went to Arlington for a full military ceremony, to his family for proper burial, and that case is now closed appropriately. Last year, in the middle of lockdowns, we were able to go out and continue with another job of the same nature on a new aircraft wreck. The results of that are not public domain at this time, but we did a full 2 months on site with an awful lot of work with results that are being assessed now. And to lead that into what's coming up, we have another DPAA job that we're starting in April this year. This one will actually be in slightly colder water, actually lots colder water, will be in the Baltic. So instead of 18, 20 degrees in the Adriatic will be in 2 degrees in the Baltic, but it's a similar nature of work. So that will be a B-17 aircraft, and basically it's an excavation and survey of the site to see if any possible material evidence or possible osseous remains still exist on that site. And then one of our biggest projects at the moment is the Danish king's ship, the Gribsjunden, which sunk in 1495 in what was at the time Danish waters, but which is now Swedish waters. We did a full month-long excavation project on her in 2019. We did some artifact recovery for ongoing conservation and research at the tail end of last year in November, bringing up barrels that were in the hold of the wreck so they could be analysed both with dendrochronology to look at their age and where the wood that made the barrels was grown, but also to start looking at DNA to look at what may have been carried in those barrels. And then this year in May, June, we'll be back out for another full month-long season on her. So this year's two main jobs coming up are a DPAA B-17 job in the Baltic and part 2 of our Gribsjunden project in Sweden. Second part of your question there, is there things that I would really like to do? Everyone's got a bucket list, and I think you should. The main one is in a working capacity for an extended duration. I would most like to visit and dive and hopefully work on operations in the Antarctic. Now, whether that's likely, because I'm not getting any younger, but it has always been my sort of bucket list thing. I'd like to go down there for, a full season and basically work on some of the scientific diving operations that take place down there, because the footage I've seen is just mind blowing, and it's one of those continents I'm obsessed with from reading the accounts of the great era of exploration of Shackleton, Scott, Amundsen, etc. So yeah, that's probably where I'd most like to go.
I think you lead a very exciting life and seem absolutely entirely happy with it. It's everything is and the results that you're getting, I mean, that must be so satisfying. Wonderful.
Definitely the DPAA work, when you are working to send a family their relative home who gave everything, sacrificed their own life for the protection of others in a war. And when a job like that succeeds, and then the team get like a handwritten letter from family members thanking you for what you did, it is unbelievably rewarding. I mean, it's hard work, it's tough work, but it's just so rewarding to look at the end result. So more of those jobs would be good for that reason. And the teamwork, we put together in 2017 on the Tulsa American, we were nearly a 20-man team. Last year, because of COVID, we were quite much more restricted. We were an 8-man team, but we were still able to work effectively and productively. But the camaraderie of working with a team, living together on a boat in an accommodation block for a month, 2 months, to achieve such an end goal, these people become more than friends. It's like a brotherhood, and that's a very rewarding part of it as well.
Brilliant. It's been an absolute joy listening to your stories, and I thank you very much. We'll end there. Good luck with all your future projects. I hope you make it to Antarctica. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll sign off for now, and once again, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and a pleasure talking to you.
You too. Bye for now.
Take care.